Once again, ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to all of you. Before we begin, I have a few housekeeping rules to share. Kindly switch your mobile phones to silent mode to avoid any interruptions. And kindly fill in the seats at the front of the hall. Please feel free to ask any event organizer for assistance if needed. We have a packed agenda and we will start each session promptly. Please be seated at least 5 minutes before the start of each session to avoid disruptions. You're also invited to visit Alliance Bank, Telecom Malaysia, KLCCP, and UNGC MYB exhibition booths located outside the auditorium. We encourage active participation during panel discussions and Q&A sessions. We will be using Slido. You may scan the QR code displayed on the screen. Once you've joined the event, you may type in your questions at any time during the session. We encourage you to share your experiences and insights on social media using our event hashtag GoESG2026. Also, do visit the UNGC MYB booth after tagging and posting your photos to collect a free gift while stocks last. On behalf of the organizers, we would like to thank you for your cooperation. We humbly request everyone to be seated as we are about to commence shortly. Ladies and gentlemen, just to share a few housekeeping rules once again, kindly ensure to switch your mobile phones to silent mode to avoid any interruptions, and kindly fill in the seats at the front of the hall. Please feel free to ask any event organizer for assistance if needed. We have a packed agenda, ladies and gentlemen, and we will start each session promptly. Please be seated at least 5 minutes before the start of each session to avoid disruptions. And on behalf of the organizers, we would like to thank you for your cooperation, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, we request everyone to be seated as we are about to commence our Go ESG 2026. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise. Announcing the arrival of Yang Berhormat Datuk Sri Arthur Joseph Kurup, Minister of Natural Resources and Environmental Sustainability, accompanied by Farus Nadar, Executive Director of UN Global Compact Network Malaysia and Brunei. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Please be seated. Before we commence with the formal proceedings, we would like to capture a commemorative group photo. We respectfully invite Yang Berhormat Datuk Sri Arthur Joseph Kurup, Faros, and our distinguished guests in the front row to look towards the official photographers on stage. Can we have all of our guests to be centered a little closer, but they're sitting though. Okay. Can we invite all our guests to be a little closer towards the center for our photographers to capture this very moment? Once again, can we have all our guests towards the center of the auditorium so our photographers may capture this moment? Oh, may I please check green light from the photographers? Okay, all right. Can we have a video as well, please? Perhaps a subtle wave. Would that be okay? All right. So on my count, 3, 2, 1, just wave for the cameras. In 3, 2, 1, wave. Thank you for participating in the group photo, and special thank you to our photographers as well. Ladies and gentlemen, you may be seated. A very good morning and a warm welcome, Yang Berhormat Datuk Sri Arthur Joseph Kurup, Minister of Natural Resources and Environmental Sustainability. Farus Nadar, Executive Director of UN Global Compact Network, Malaysia and Brunei. Event Patron, Alliance Bank Malaysia Berhad. Event Partners, Telecom Malaysia Berhad. KLCCP Staple Group, Sarawak Energy Berhad. Event Merchandise Partner, Focus Point Holdings Berhad. TNG Digital Sendran Berhad. QSR Brands Holdings Berhad. Our venue partner, AICB Center of Excellence, distinguished guests, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Go ESG 2026 organized by UN Global Compact Network Malaysia and Brunei. Please give a big round of applause. My name is Erin Cheong, and I'm honored to be your MC for today's event. Ladies and gentlemen, as Malaysia enters a transformative decade, we stand at a critical juncture. We are here to chart a bold vision, one where our economy is not just growing, but is integrated, resilient, and responsible. To set the stage for this vision, please welcome Farus Nadar, Executive Director of UN Global Compact Network Malaysia and Brunei, to deliver the welcome remarks.
Bismillah. Yang berhormat Datuk Sri Arthur Joseph Kurup, Minister of Natural Resources and Environmental Sustainability. Thank you so much for being with us here today, sir. Encik Ahmad Zafarullah Abdul Jalil, the Director of Asian Integration Monitoring Directorate, the ASEAN Secretariat. Puan Nur Fadilah Muhammad Ali, Chief Corporate Officer, Telekom Malaysia Berhad. Dr. Aaron Sam, Group Chief Strategy Officer of Alliance Bank. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and a very warm welcome to Go ESG 2026. It's a very serious crowd. So I want to try a dad joke. For those who have heard this, sorry lah. In all the animals, which animal is least impacted by climate change? Any guesses? Least. Those who know the answer, just humor us. Huh? Any? Just guess lah. Cockroach, lizard. No? Ayo, guess also cannot lah. 1, 2 guesses, come on. Rat, okay, I heard one rat. Cockroach, okay. Actually, it is the Egyptian crocodile because they live in the Nile. I'm glad we got some jokes out of that. Okay. So on behalf of UN Global Compact Network Malaysia and Brunei, thank you for joining us this morning. Your presence reflects a shared recognition that the decision we make today as leaders, investors, and practitioners will shape Malaysia's economic trajectory for decades to come. This year's theme, The Future We Build, is intentionally simple. It reflects a shift in mindset that sustainability is no longer a parallel conversation running alongside growth. It is now central to how growth itself is designed across innovation, investment, and inclusion. Now, in its 5th year, Go ESG has evolved alongside the realities facing businesses and policymakers. We have moved beyond asking why sustainability matters. The more urgent question before us today is how sustainability is embedded into real economic decisions, from boardrooms to supply chains, from policy signals to capital flows. Malaysia stands at a critical juncture. Rapid technological change, shifting trade dynamics, and rising sustainability expectations are reshaping our competitive landscape. The choices we make now will determine whether our economy remains resilient, integrated, and trusted in a rapidly changing world. That is why today's conversation matters. Over the course of this event, Go ESG 2026 will explore the strategic and operational levers shaping the future economy, from regional policy alignment and digital infrastructure to the realities faced by businesses and SMEs navigating ESG expectations across their value chains. We are especially honored this morning to be joined by YB Datuk Sri Arthur Joseph Kurup, Minister of Natural Resources and Environmental Sustainability. His presence underscores the importance of close alignment between policy direction and private sector execution, a partnership that is essential if sustainability is to move from ambition to impact. So I tried to correct about climate tax price, but that did not successful. Maybe you can try later. Later this morning, we will also witness the launch of a new supply chain sustainability ecosystem, a new program for us at UNGC MYB. called Rantai Next, an initiative designed to support businesses in translating sustainability expectations into practical and scalable action. This reflects our belief that sustainability must be enabled, not imposed, and that progress is fastest when collaboration replaces fragmentation. Go ESG has always been about convening, bringing together leaders across government, business, finance, academia, and civil society to move beyond conversations and towards clearer thinking, stronger alignment, and decisive action. As we begin today's program, I encourage each of you to engage openly, challenge assumptions, and reflect honestly on the role you play in shaping the future we build, not just for your organizations, but for Malaysia as a whole. Thank you, and have a good event.
Thank you, Farouz. I would now like to invite Yang Berhormat Datuk Sri Arthur Joseph Kurup, Minister of Natural Resources and Environmental Sustainability, to deliver his keynote speech.
Thank you, Madam MC. Mr. Farouz Nadar, Executive Director of the UN Global Compact for Malaysia and Brunei, Dr. Ahmad Zafarullah Abdul Jalil, Director of ASEAN Integration Monitoring Directorate, Ms. Noor Fadila Muhammad Ali, Chief Corporate Officer of Telecom Malaysia Berhad, Dr. Aaron Sam, Executive VP of Alliance Bank, Haji Siti Aisyah Adnan, Senior Vice President, Corporate Services, Sarawak Energy Berhad, Choi Yut Ye, Senior Manager, Environmental, Social and Governance of KLCCP, to all distinguished business leaders who are present here today, all policymakers, investors, and members of the UN Global Compact Network Malaysia and Brunei, ladies and gentlemen. Allow me to begin by expressing my sincere appreciation to the UN Global Compact Network of Malaysia and Brunei for the invitation to deliver this keynote address. Thank you as well for the warm welcome and for convening this timely platform at a critical juncture, where today's decisions will shape Malaysia's economic trajectory for decades ahead. The title of this conference is simple, yet powerful. The Future We Build, Shaping an Integrated, Resilient, and Responsible Malaysia. It is a mandate for collective action. It reminds us that the sustainable future is not something we inherit by default, but something we must design through intention and integrity. We are living through an era of rapid transformation. Around the world, economies are being reshaped by fast-moving technology, shifting trade patterns, and the accelerating push towards sustainability. These forces are not isolated. They intersect, demanding that governments and businesses align their purpose with measurable action. For Malaysia, this creates a clear choice. We can see sustainability as a constraint, something to manage after growth has already happened, or we can see it as a catalyst, something that shapes growth from the start. This is why platforms like Go ESG matter. I understand that this is now the 6th year of the conference, and over that time, Go ESG has helped us move beyond asking whether sustainability is important. Today, the more meaningful question is how we embed sustainability into innovation, investment, and inclusion. In this new era, sustainability is not an add-on, but has become the outcome of sound economic design. Sustainability is no longer a niche topic, but a core economic issue. It dictates competitiveness, access to global capital, and long-term profitability. Countries and companies that build sustainability into their operations will attract investors, retain talent, and earn trust. Those that wait will find themselves reacting to change instead of shaping it. This is where the private sector's role becomes critical. The government can set policy direction, put frameworks into place and provide incentives. But it is businesses like yours that turn direction into results. Your investment decisions, your procurement choices, your product designs, and supply chain practices will determine whether sustainability remains an aspiration or becomes a real competitive advantage. Today's theme speaks directly to this shared responsibility. Integration means breaking down silos between policy, finance, technology, and industry. Resilience means building business models that can withstand climate risk, supply chain disruptions, and regulatory changes. Responsibility means ensuring that growth creates value not only for shareholders, but also for workers, local communities, the environment, and future generations. At the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environmental Sustainability, our mandate is to ensure that Malaysia's development pathway remains both economically robust and environmentally credible. In line with the Sustainable Development Goals, our ministry plays a central role in aligning environmental stewardship with national development priorities so that sustainability commitments are translated into predictable policy signals that can give businesses the confidence to invest. Our approach is not to regulate just for regulation's sake, but to enable transition. This includes strengthening climate and ESG governance, improving transparency and data consistency, supporting carbon market readiness, and scaling up nature-based and climate-resilient solutions. These efforts are designed to reduce uncertainty, unlock green financing opportunities, and support Malaysian businesses, particularly SMEs, in adopting sustainability in ways that are practical and commercially viable. And we are already seeing this impact. At the International Green Tech and Eco Products Exhibition and Conference Malaysia, or IGEM 2025, Malaysia secured 7.3 billion ringgit in potential green investments. That did not happen by chance. It reflects growing confidence that Malaysia is serious about sustainability as a pillar of its economic strategy. At the same time, Malaysia is also embedding climate action firmly into its national policy. Our ministry is advancing the National Climate Change Bill to provide clear, transparent, and long-term framework for climate action across sectors. By providing regulatory certainty, this landmark legislation will place Malaysia's climate agenda on a firm legal footing. This clarity will allow companies to plan with confidence and investors to allocate capital with certainty. I'm mindful that many in this room, particularly CFOs, for you, every ringgit must justify itself. Sustainability investments are often subject to the toughest scrutiny, but the data has shifted. Sustainability is no longer a cost center, it is a value generator. By investing now, you are buying your future seat at the global table. Those who lead early will spend their time innovating, while those who wait will spend their time explaining. But policies alone are not enough. The private sector must be willing to move early, not merely to react quickly, to invest before regulation compels it, to set examples before others move ahead, to innovate ahead of our competitors, and to see sustainability not as a reporting requirement, but as a mindset for long-term value creation. Today, I challenge each of us to move beyond rhetoric. Let us integrate sustainability into core strategy, build resilience into the heart of economic planning, and act responsibly with long-term value in mind. When we make sustainability a foundation, not just a footnote, we create not only a resilient Malaysia, but a Malaysia that is competitive, credible, and compassionate. The future we build begins with our choices today. Let us choose wisely. Thank you, and I wish you a productive and meaningful Go ESG 2026.
Thank you, YB Datuk Sri Ata Joseph Kurup, for that inspiring keynote address. We kindly request Yang Berhormat to remain on center stage for a very special agenda, the official launch of Rantai Next. To join the minister on stage, please welcome Farus Nadar, Executive Director of UN Global Compact Network, Malaysia and Brunei. Introducing Rantai Next, a digital bridge that accelerates ESG adoption across the value chain to transform compliance into a lasting competitive advantage. To officiate this launch, we have a symbolic gesture of connectivity. We invite Yang Berhormat and Farus to please take the cables before you. These cables represent the vital connection between policy and practice, between corporations and their supply chains. On the count of three, we invite you to connect the cables to power up the future of our supply chains. In 3, 2, 1, connect. Ladies and gentlemen, Rantai Next is officially launched. To commemorate this moment, once again, I invite Farus Nadar to present a token of appreciation to Yang Berhormat Datuk Sri Ata Joseph Kurup for gracing us with his presence today. Thank you once again, Yang Berhormat Datuk Sri Ata Joseph Kurup and Farus Nadar. Ladies and gentlemen, Yang Berhormat Datuk Sri Ata has another official engagement to attend to. We would like to express our deepest gratitude for his presence and leadership in driving Malaysia's sustainability agenda today. Let's give the minister a resounding round of applause as he takes his leave. Ladies and gentlemen, next we move into a thought-provoking panel discussion on the strategic direction of our future economy. As the global landscape becomes increasingly complex, Malaysia's future economy playbook requires a synchronized approach across policy, infrastructure, and connectivity. We must go beyond isolated efforts toward a convergence of visionary leadership, technological innovation, and bold strategic choices. This brings us to the core of today's discussion, exploring how these elements will shape a resilient and sustainable world. Ladies and gentlemen, presenting the Future Economy Playbook, Regional Strategies for a Better Tomorrow. The panelists for this session are Dr. Ahmad Zafarullah Abdul Jalil, Director, ASEAN Integration Monitoring Directorate, Ms. Nur Fadila Moma Ali, Chief Corporate Officer, Telecom Malaysia Berhad. And we are pleased to have Termina Kausji, Independent Broadcast Journalist and Partner and Comms Director at the Big Picture Communications, as the moderator for this session. Please join me in welcoming our panelists to the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, during the session, you are encouraged to add your questions by scanning the Slido QR code on screen. Ladies and gentlemen, while we await for Ms. Nur Fadila Moma Ali to join us, I will now pass the time to Temina on stage.
A very good morning. Thank you. Thank you so very much to our MC for the warm welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to you all. My name is Tamina Kausji, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here moderating this very first plenary session. And as of course, we wait for our esteemed panelists, Cik Fadila, to join us. We already do have Dr. Zafarullah with us. Allow me to first help frame this entire issue. This opening plenary, everyone, is on the choices that will shape Malaysia as well as ASEAN's economic future. We are entering 2026 at a moment of real global recalibration. The world economy has been challenged with seamless globalization, and this will continue to be a year of sharper competition. So, what's been under pressure? Supply chains, energy security, critical minerals, digital infrastructure, and also climate resilience. Meanwhile, we here in Southeast Asia, we're sitting right at the heart of these critical fault lines. ASEAN is now collectively one of the largest economic regions in the world. And fittingly, the next decade to come, 2026, by the time we are in 2036, of course, we will be past the 2030 landmark and also the 2030 SDGs. But at the same time, let's not forget that ASEAN, very critically, has approximately 319.1 million people under the age of 30 as of this year. That is an immense youth population. So, bringing it back to concerns for not just us here today, but also the youth. Integration, sustainability, digital transformation, all of this, which has formed the core of buzzwords and aspiral agendas for the past 5-6 years, as I'm sure all of us here in the room are very familiar with. It has now moved into being the foundation of competitiveness. Malaysia's ASEAN chairmanship in 2025 did help to advance key regional priorities. But in 2026, under the Philippines leadership, the question becomes, how do we carry that momentum forward into delivery? How are we going to ensure regional frameworks translate into real outcomes for businesses, the workforce, and also, of course, local communities across borders? So, ASEAN has never struggled with the what. The challenge has always really been the how across increasingly diverse, now 11 countries. So how do our governments make difficult trade-offs when national pressures slow regional alignment? How do we reduce fragmentation? Standards, regulation, infrastructure planning. And how do we build the next phase of growth in a way which is not only fast, but sustainable and inclusive? Let's not forget the climate shocks are intensifying. The digital economy is also becoming the backbone of everything from finance to logistics and public services. So everything needs to work smoothly and no one component can fail. So this session is about the challenges and also opportunities of this future economy playbook. We are most privileged to be joined today by two leaders with a rare vantage point, one who tracks ASEAN integration and recovery efforts across the region from within the ASEAN Secretariat, and also Cheno Fardila, who has driven national level digital infrastructure transformation from both regulatory as well as corporate leadership. While we're still waiting for Chetnor Fadilla to join us on stage, I am going to take the opportunity to begin the discussion firstly with Dr. Ahmad Zafarullah Abdul Jalil. Please do allow me to give you a short introduction to Dr. Zafarullah, who is joining us here from Jakarta. Now, Dr. Zafarullah oversees the systematic monitoring of the implementation as well as outcomes of ASEAN's regional economic integration agenda, as well as ASEAN's post-pandemic recovery efforts, and this is all via the ASEAN Comprehensive Recovery Framework. Previously, Dr. Zafarullah was a senior economist at the Islamic Development Bank in Jeddah. Prior to that, he was a senior manager, Economic and Market Analysis Division of the Securities Commission Malaysia, as well as Associate Professor of Economics at University Utara, Malaysia. He holds a PhD in economics from Cerdy University Auvergne in France. Dr. Zafarullah? Yes. Yes, I do notice. Perhaps we'll just take a minute as well, ladies and gentlemen. Allow us the time to get Sheikh Noor Fadila to join us on stage too. Thank you very much. Sheikh Noor Fadila, in the meanwhile, Ms. Noor Fadila Muhammad Ali is the Chief Corporate Officer with Telecom Malaysia Berhad, a seasoned corporate leader with over 30 years of experience driving financial resilience, digital transformation, and also strategic growth in Malaysia's thriving telecommunications sector. As Chief Corporate Officer of TM, she oversees critical functions including regulatory affairs, risk management, sustainability, and strategic communications. A trailblazer in her field, Chenor Padilla made history as the very first woman to be appointed Group Chief Financial Officer, GCFO, of TM. Her leadership also extends beyond the corporate boardroom to national policy. During her tenure at the Malaysian Communications and Multimedia Commission, which is the MCMC, she played a pivotal role in the Jandela program, which is a national digital infrastructure plan that received global recognition at the World Summit on the Information Society, WSIS 2023. Ladies and gentlemen, that said and done, I will also just give you all the heads up that while we're having a brief conversation on all things to do with the Future Economy Playbook, together with Chenor Fadila and Dr. Zafarullah, we also do have a little bit of time towards the end of this session. And this is where you should be using your Slido QR code, which is, of course, at the top side of the screen, if you have any questions. And I'm pretty sure we're very aware how this works. If you see a question that echoes what you would like to ask, just upvote it. That will come up right to the top, and we'll be sure to get the ones that are top voted first. All right, so shall we begin? Dr. Zafarullah, I'd love to pose this first question to you. So all things ASEAN, right? Now, ASEAN leaders, they frequently agree on the what. But as we've all noticed and observed over the past 50 years or so, we all struggle with the how, coming from neighbors who are very diverse at the same time too. From your viewpoint, where are governments hesitating to make certain tough choices that ultimately do slow regional integration and as well as sustainability progress? Let's build that story here.
Very good morning, and thank you first for inviting us, the ASEAN Secretariat, to participate in this very important event. And as you correctly pointed out, I think Malaysia did a very good job as a chair of ASEAN. But I think the work doesn't stop, and when the chairmanship stop, and it's good that we still have forums or dialogues related to ASEAN being held in KL. Otherwise, everything will be held in the Philippines this year. And you correctly pointed out that I think ASEAN, I think this is also one of the major criticism against ASEAN, that we always came up with a very good plan. And then case in point, I'm not sure to what extent everybody's aware of this. Last year during Malaysia chairmanship, I think 2025 was also the year which is the end of the previous ASEAN blueprint or ASEAN Vision 2025. So meaning that we need a new blueprint or a new vision, and then Malaysia did come. I mean, ASEAN did come with a new vision in 2025 during Malaysia Chairmanship, which basically guides our vision for the next 20 years, which is called the ASEAN Vision 2045, our shared future. So hopefully we'll be able to achieve those futures. So in this vision, I think we set ourselves a very high ambitions, but again, as you pointed out, to what extent we be able to deliver on this vision, which are very important for everyone here as ASEAN citizens. So I think the challenge has again has never been about vision, but because we know where we want to go as a region. I mean, for the past 20 years, for the past 10 years, and then for the next 20 years. But then how we actually turn this vision into consistent system-wide implementation is a very, very important question. That doesn't mean that we didn't achieve anything, but I think we could do better. I think that's a frank, in my honest opinion. So just to explain, I mean, not to justify, but then to explain why this is not as easy as it is, right? I think the first one is the fact that implementation, it normally slows when regional commitments require government to reshape entrench domestic systems. Because if you look on paper, it may seem simple and straightforward. We just want to harmonize standard. We just want to upgrade our system. We just want to make sure that our procedures are aligned across all the 11 member states now. But then once that commitments filter down to line agencies, to implementing ministers, then I think all the problem will start to materialize, right? So because now it's no longer about symbolic commitment, but now it's about real commitments or real implementations that we have to undertake on the ground. And this is normally where implementations or progress slows down. Because if you look at all these commitments at the regional level, for Malaysia or for any other ASEAN member state to implement, they would have to rethink their long-standing rules that are entrenched, and then to come up or to reform this long-standing rule will be very difficult. So even at the more ground level, you have to reorganize your workflows. You even have to modernize your infrastructures. All these are what we call heavy liftings that the countries have to realize. And so when countries, they agree in principle, but then domestic realities, legislative cycles, for example, if I remember, I'm not sure if you're aware of RCEP, right? Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnerships. I think it took more than 10 years when it comes to negotiating the agreement. But when it comes to entry into force, I think one country, they keep on delaying it because they still have to table this to their parliaments. And then the legislative process was so cumbersome, and then it kind of delays the entry into force of the agreements. And then resources constraint, and then most importantly is about competing national priorities, right? So regional commitments may not align with your national priorities, and then this would obviously need recalibrating. So I think the difficulties is about recalibrating domestic system, which was never or rarely designed with regional integration in mind. So I think that's how thing is in ASEAN, and with ASEAN member states. And then implementation is also slow because ASEAN operate within a structurally diverse, I think you pointed out this correctly, institutional landscape, not just about development, but it's also about the institutions that vary quite widely across all the member states. And they vary in terms of technical capacity, regulatory maturity, staffing, resources, digitalization levels, and then as well as internal coordination capabilities. So all these are reasons why I think we are good at thinking, coming up with vision, but when it comes to implementation, this is very, very difficult. Especially we at the Secretariat, it's always difficult for us to follow up with member state when you're going to sign this, when you're going to agree on this. They will always come back to us. Oh, we are still conducting internal consultation. We still have to consult with our line agencies, and then it takes months for them to come up with a decision. But doesn't mean, having said that, doesn't mean that we have not achieved anything, because I think despite this constraint, um, ASEAN has came up with several ways or mechanisms to go about this. I think just to highlight one of it is the importance of finding pathways, right? We have 11 member states. Doesn't mean that when we have one initiative that are very important, that we think that things like such as sustainability, I think we want to make sure that things happen. So we cannot wait for all member states, 11 member states to be ready. So that's where I think previously we had ASEAN minus X, for example, in our FTAs. But now we have pathways. For example, I think one example which may be very relevant for our discussion today is ASEAN Power Grid. I think the objective is to have this 18 interconnectivity to be operating. So obviously we cannot do all 18. It's very resource intensive. So what we do is now we try to phase this out, and then 8 out of these 18 are already operating. So we started with the Laos, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore LTMS. I think Tenaga Nasional is highly involved in this. And then this actually demonstrated what is possible and what is feasible, something that can be done in practice, not just on paper. And we also have some sub-regional work that are currently taking place in Borneo with Brunei, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Philippines. At the same time, other example, for example, the authorized economy operators, mutual recognition agreements, and the ASEAN country, ASEAN custom transit system. So all this, I mean, we start with few countries first, and then as a pilot, and then we'll broaden it up to other member states. I think, and then another, which is also example, which is also very relevant today, is the QR-based bilateral payment system. Right? I mean, those of you who travel across the region, you may notice that you can pay through QR-based payment system, right? I think now we have out of 11, 7 now you can do QR payment bilaterally, except Philippines, Brunei, Myanmar, and Timor-Leste, because they are still new. So what I gave just now is examples of where we may be facing stumbling block. I mean, the reason is there, but then we still make progress, and then we always try to find ways around the issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that, Dr. Zafarullah. I just have I think a one-word question and answer reply for you. I just wonder, ASEAN, of course, we function not as a trade bloc. We know that. It is more a cooperation framework. And henceforth, do you think explicitly naming our accountability gaps, such as for, of course, energy interconnection, would be more helpful in accelerating the momentum? Because as you also mentioned, 2025 marked that end of that 10-year period, 2026 onwards, it's a fresh start in a sense. So if we start naming where the gaps are, particularly for the less economically strong ASEAN member states, so they are also able to upscale themselves rather than wait until their turn comes. Any thoughts on that?
I think naming and shaming is something that ASEAN, because we are very polite people, right?
It's
So naming and
peer
shaming
pressure,
is a
right?
no-no. I mean, internally we do. For example, because I do integration monitoring, we have a lot of agreements that are still waiting for to be entered into force, to be ratified by some member states. And then we cannot wait forever for these member states to, but obviously during meetings we name who are the one who are lagging. But then to do it publicly, I think is something that ASEAN would never do, lah, I think.
So more about stakeholder management.
Yes, I think we will try to address all those internally. I think elevating it from working level up to ministers, even up to leaders level. I think so. In case we cannot make progress at this level, but I will try to manage it internally first before we go out.
Just a thought as someone who's worked, business and economic financial news for close to 15 years now, perhaps naming the cost of these economic leakages would be what can push us forward to actually work towards implementation, right?
Identifying the issues, the gaps are okay, but then associating this with one particular countries, for example, I think we try to avoid that. But I think it's good. We always do that. We assess, we don't just monitor, for example, progress, but we also want to understand what is it that holding you back, right? And then trying to contribute and then see how we can address those positively and constructively.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that, Dr. Zafarullah. And Chetno Fadila, I'd of course love to zoom in on digital transformation. And successful digital transformation is also defined by leadership more than just technology. If you could perhaps share with us a little more around your experience as Chief Corporate Officer, whereby TM actually has a fairly unique approach to this role and the leadership sort of decisions as well as indecisions, which are really important for accelerating digital as well as economic transformation.
Thank you, Tivina. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good morning. Thank you for inviting me to this session today. The theme for Go ESG session for 2026 is the future we build. That's a very powerful theme. So at TM, the future that we build is not only for us at Telecom Malaysia, but as a government-linked company or a national company, the future we build is also for Malaysia and also the region, right? One of the vital perspective for TM is that we set ourselves our aspiration by 2030. We would like to become digital powerhouse. So what it means is that we are transitioning ourselves from a telecommunication service provider, telecommunication player to a digital powerhouse. So with that ambition, aspiration in mind, digital transformation is at the core of our strategy, at the core of business, at the core of our heart, right? When we look at the success stories for digital transformation, we can look at from many angles. So from my own experience, having been in the industry for about close to 3 decades, and in TM more than 2 decades, right? So I've witnessed transitions of technology improvements from analog to digital. I have also witnessed the transition or the advancement from a dial-up internet service. Of course, some of you may relate to this, right?
I remember the tone.
Yeah. Right. In Malaysia, this service is called Streamix. We transitioned that service to a more high-speed internet experience, not only in Malaysia, but also worldwide. That is also an ingredient of a digital transformation, because we have to make sure that the infrastructure we build, the platform we build, would enable the future deployment of digital transformation, also digital journey, and also the future, right? So in Malaysia, in 20 in 2010, Telekom Malaysia Berhad launched our first high-speed broadband service in Malaysia. We call Uni5. So high-speed broadband, when BTM launched the service, is so make available to other service providers in Malaysia. So in terms of telecommunication regulatory regime in Malaysia, we adopt open access network. So as the national infrastructure builder, we build the network and the other service provider also subscribe the service from us. This would, one of the success story for Malaysia to accelerate the digital adoption. Imagine, right? Imagine before this, not many people have access to a good broadband internet service. But in Malaysia today, be it mobile connection or fixed connection, you can say it's almost pervasive. It's about 85% broadband connection today in Malaysia. That's one of the success story of the first layer on digital adoption and making the platform and infrastructure uh, 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 future ready. So as a national telecommunication provider as well, Telecom Malaysia is not a young company, Tabina. We are celebrating our 80th birthday or 80th anniversary this year in April. We have been around for 8 decades. From merely providing basic telephony, basic telegraph services to what it is today. So Telecom Malaysia is also very crucial in making Malaysia on the map as a digital hub for the region. So we have about 33 submarine cables, making Malaysia hyper-connected to our neighbors, the neighboring countries, and also the rest of the world, right? So we talk about basic telecommunication infrastructure. We also talk about connecting Malaysia to the rest of the world. And now we talk about the other portion of the digital infrastructure, which is very important. The next layer is to build data center or IT-based, digital-based infrastructure. So Telecom Malaysia today, we have about 5 enterprise-grade data center, and we also have about 8 edge facilities throughout Malaysia. So why this is important? Because as the compute power increase, right, as digital adoption increase, the needs for high capacity servers and infrastructure is no longer behind the IT room, right? It's, you have to actually have someone else, right? A service provider like us providing the service. And today we know the world is also moving towards AI. We talk about GPU, we talk GPU as service. Telecom Malaysia has already have the necessary infrastructure. We have also built our GPU in our data center in Johor, right? That enable organizations to adopt the service from us and to make sure, right, that we are ready towards digital transformation. Behind the layers of the infrastructure will be the service, right? So the service means you and I, people actually use the service. So we have solutions, digital solutions that enable the government. We have digital solutions that enable the enterprise, the small and medium businesses, as well as you and me, as well as our employees, to allow us to adopt this just transition to be a fully digital organization by 2030. Telecom Malaysia has adopted a policy that by the end of 2026, 100% of our employees must be digitally conversant, right? As we also provide services to other organizations, right? We must make sure that 40% of our employees at least must be digitally competent. That's how we look at just transition in terms of adopting digital transformation in TM. So likewise, AI is coming our way, we cannot ignore, right? So this year we are going to begin uh, several modules of AI for our team. One of the modules will be AI for everyone, right? Like you and me, right? We have to make sure that when our team use AI, they have to know the code of ethics, they have to know the standards, they have to know the pros and cons, right? We also want to actually allow our team to play with AI, to make sure that when they play with AI in the, of course, in a secure environment sandbox, right? We allow our team to um, enhance their creativity, either to improve productivity and efficiency of our daily operations or as service or solutions that we can offer to our clients, and so on and so forth, right? So Telecom Malaysia, as I said, we will build the future. It's not for only ourselves. We also build the future for the society that we serve, the community that we serve. So beyond this Telecom Malaysia, we are also empowering the community, for example, micro SME. We have programs that I think end of third quarter last year, we launched a program called Jangkau Digital. Jangkau Digital in English means the reach of digital, right? So we adopted a kampong, a remote village in Tioman, where this is our pilot, where it's a small kampong. There's only one kampong street there, maybe about 2 kilometers in length. First of all, we have to make sure that they adopt broadband and a proper good broadband service, right? So what we do is that throughout the streets in the kampong and also the congregation area, we build in the Wi-Fi, outdoor Wi-Fi, so that the people the folks in the kampong can actually experience good connectivity. Then what's next, right? So what's next? We look at the kampong folks, the SME, the youth. What else can we do to help them uplift their life, uplift the household income, right? We work with them. We work with them. The kampong, if you have not been to Tioman or been to Kampong Mukut, it's a very beautiful place. If you love rock climbing or mount climbing, this is they have a Via Ferrata there, one of the toughest track in the world. So we help the tour guides, right, publicize their service. We also help them connect to potential customers. So in the future, we hope this could be tracked. And then with this pilot, we hope to also move on to other remote villages in Malaysia. And also in the kampong, not only the youth that we take care of, we also look at the school kids, school children. So we work with the schools to make sure the school kids are trained in the STEM education, so that when they actually build their dream or their dream and future also will be far larger than what they see physically in the kampong. So I think the future is I think it's whatever that they dream on, with the education and also with the exposure to the STEM learnings that we introduce in the kampong.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that, Chaina Fadila. Now, clearly, of course, it's not just digital, but AI is the future. And it's really heartening to know that TM has your 2030 goal for 100% of your workforce, which also, of course, then includes women, which TM is a strong employer of. And did you know that globally, women are only represented in about 29% of AI-enabled roles? On the other hand, AI-related skills are going to be what's going to allow people to have up to 50% higher wages in the very near future. Not forgetting, of course, TM does not only work in digital capability, but not just execution, but also implementation at the very local micro MSME level, really bringing us to the fact that digital capacity is all about whether each and every person can participate. Thank you for that. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for the questions that have been coming in strongly. Please continue upvoting if you see a question you like, because we'll have time to take maybe one or two, maximum maybe three. On that note, Dr. Zafarullah, let's move in quickly and speedily as we move to close out our end of the discussion. First, Dr. Zafarullah, and then I'll come back to Chet Nur Fadila. Dr. Zafarullah, now our geopolitical and climate risks are intensifying. I think all of 2025 was spent with a lot of attention towards tariffs and how they impacted economies, climate risks. We saw so many unfortunate and also very harsh impacts on populations all the way from Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, from floods, etc. Now, which sustainability policy do you feel could shift and also that ASEAN can no longer afford to delay if we are looking at it from an economic resilience viewpoint? Our lens needs to change, right?
Thank you. So before that, just to mention that if you look at the work of ASEAN when it comes to sustainability, I think previously it was mainly focused on how we want to cooperate when it comes to regulatory frameworks, right? And then that's why if you look at the meetings that we have or the discussions that we had, it usually took place among the Ministry of Environment. But then I think over the past few years, we realized that in order for us to move the needles when it comes to sustainability issues, I think we need to speak the languages of the businesses as well, right? So because they are the one who will be able to make the impact. So I think that's realizing that I think over the past few years, especially during Malaysia as well as Laos PDR chairmanship, I think we have came up with more framework. I know that we are very good in this. We coming up with vision and framework, and but then it's something that we hope that can make impacts in the future in terms of sustainability. So we have come up with some framework that would be able to that speak the languages of the businesses and then would relate to how businesses see these issues. So these are, for example, the circular economy framework for the ASEAN Economic Community. And then we also came up with the ASEAN strategy for carbon neutrality, as well as ASEAN strategy for blue economy. So these are mostly initiatives undertaken by the economic track, and then see how the discussions can be moved from environment track to also involve the economic actors as well in the region. Having said that, I think there are a few things that I believe that ASEAN would need to make more efforts. I think the first one is on how we should be able to have a more region-wide approach to how our MSMEs can be empowered, especially in terms of their capacity, as well as their access to finance. I think everyone here is aware that MSMEs is a very important part of the economy, right? They contribute significantly to employment, even to the GDP. But then when it comes to green transition, I think they are also the ones struggling the most, right? So it's not that they don't want to comply, but then the how here is very complicated for them on the tools, the financing, as well as the reporting remains inaccessible for most of them. So I think this is where ASEAN can add values. I think we have several platforms which may be able to assist the region MSMEs with a more consistent and region-wide entry points when it comes to sustainability transition. So we have a center of excellence for MSMEs in green transitions. I think under Malaysia chairmanship, we launched that. So now the step forward is how we want to make it a practical regional gateway so that we can offer our MSMEs with simple template, shared advisory support, as well as clearer pathways to access to finance, for example. I think another major important initiative that we have launched is the ASEAN Simplified ESG disclosures for SMEs in supply chain. So again, this is again to simplify the work for our MSME and support them in their green transition. I have I
Yeah.
know
Yeah, we are a little pressed for time, but thank
Just
you
one
very
more.
much. Sure,
Okay.
go
I
ahead.
think another important thing is on circularity. I think last year we launched the upgrade of our ASEAN trade in goods agreement. So basically it governs how trade in goods are done within the regions. And then one major improvement in that is in the sense of we added elements of circularity, especially when it comes to how we want to do trade in remanufacturing goods, because we believe that for circularity, to make an impact, it needs to be scaled up. And then I don't think it can be done at the national level. It has to be done at the regional level.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for sharing that, Dr. Safarullah. Because what's really important is that we see more and more integration and a focus on green, blue economies, which actually means that ultimately we're working towards conserving what we have very richly available across our region, resources, not so much exploiting it anymore. As a concluding remark, perhaps, from Jane Fadila, I'd just love for you to share some perspectives around your thoughts as TM, as our industries are, of course, digitalizing at rapid scale. How do you feel Malaysia can balance speed, security, and also sustainability as we're moving into our next phase of digital infrastructure?
It's a tough question. Balancing speed, sustainability, and also resilience, security, right? Um, I would like to look at it from whether we have at this intersection of preparing ourselves for the future. We have to ask ourselves, do we have options to ignore this? And if we do not have options to ignore this, Dr. Zafrullah mentioned just now about the framework, policies and all that, and we also know the future that we build for TM, for the country and also for the region. If at that intersection and if it's something that we cannot ignore, the best choice as a strategist is to make sure that we understand this animal, that we work towards it, right? So it's no longer by incidental, but is by design, right? So the cost of adopting technology and also the future is also to a certain extent not cheap, right? So the cost of adopting green is also not cheap. So moving forward, we know that that's a certain future we want to build together, right? So what else can we do, right? So the government, of course, through the last round of the national budget have announced various grants available, especially for SMEs and micro SMEs. At Telecom Malaysia, of course, we are committed to make sure that we will deliver the future, will implement green as much as possible today and also for the future. And through the, I mentioned just now that the framework in Malaysia is that more on collaboration framework. So that means Telecom Malaysia as a builder, either network or data center of GPU and all that, this is made available to businesses out there as a service. If the cost is too daunting for certain people, but as a national organization actually can adopt, can afford to do this, what we do is offer this as a service. And then the world is also adopting collaboration, right? So more and more we will see the collaboration with people like Telecom Malaysia, right? So we build a green data center. We make a commitment to ourselves when we build or expand our data center. The next design, the next build, it's always better than the previous one, right? In terms of the green technology that we adopt, in terms of the power usage and effectiveness. So we make this as a commitment. When we make this a commitment, rest assured, the people actually collaborate with us, the businesses or government or enterprises that we empower will also be able to then adopt green and digital. And not to forget the micro SME, you are right, doctor, right? So the future of our economy will be more and more enabled by SME and also micro SME. How do we then at TM assist them, right? So we have digital marketing programs, so digital marketing tools, specifically programmed for SME and also micro SME. So that means the adoption of digital and also green It's not too daunting for them. It's affordable. And then, of course, in all our network infrastructure, digital infrastructure, security, cyber security is, of course, top of our minds in all our infrastructure and digital build.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Jane Fadila. It's been a really fast-paced, interesting discussion. What I'm going to do is take two questions, and they're the one will be more of the innovative side, and one will be a top-voted one, so that we can run through it very quickly. There's one that is top-voted. Anonymous asks, shouldn't ISO standards, or let's say globalized standards for ESG become mandatory for certain sectors to address regional or global ESG issues and be the strategy for the better tomorrow? Dr. Zafarullah, any ideas around that?
I think when it comes to ESG and then making it mandatory for certain sectors, it is quite difficult. I understand the fact that some sectors are contributing a lot more to GHG emissions. That's why it is important for them to be regulated more. But then making it mandatory for some sectors would require further assessment, right? We need to really see who are the actors within the sectors. I mean, complying with the ESG is not something easy, especially when it comes to MSMEs. And then if the sectors are mostly by the MSMEs, I think it may differ from one country to another, but yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Dr. Zafarullah. And then another top voted one, this one for Chetno Fadila. Anonymous also asks, is there discussion about making digital access more affordable for society, considering TM is the national internet service provider driving our digitalization?
We always get asked this kind of questions, right? So digital access, what does digital access means? I think digital access means in today's environment, as we prepare for the future, it's no longer just internet connection or mobile connection. It's beyond that, right? So as I mentioned just now, there are layers of communities and businesses that we service. One of the layers of members of the committee that we service, of course, the less fortunate community. So there are different packages of broadband access available, right? And to, as I mentioned just now, to SME and also micro SME, where we come from is that since digital connection is not sufficient, what else can we offer as a service to this community? Through training, through digital tools, we enable people, for example, as far as, let's say, as SME, an entrepreneur as remote as in human, to use internet and also digital applications to market their service, and also with that they obtain their clients not only from Malaysia but also all over the world. So though that is something that we enable, the future is not only about access, because access is today, is the hygiene. What we need to prepare for the future, the Malaysia where we build for the future, is beyond access. What else can we do in order to make sure that the community that we serve, the businesses that we serve, moves beyond just access, but adopt digital as part of their efficiency and productivity, and also adopt digital as part and parcel of their future income generation. That's our aspiration. That's what we are building today at Telecom.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that, Chetno Fadila. I'm going to end with picking, allow me the liberty of picking the most philosophical of these questions, I feel. Anonymous is asking, and perhaps I can ask Dr. Zafarullah, if all of the initiatives that are in progress deliver, is it enough? Will that be sufficient to, quote unquote, fix the climate crisis? And if not, what else might need to be done? Just as some initial thoughts, because when you talk about the economy, there isn't space to build that if we aren't able to overcome our most existential crisis, which is climate.
First, what initiative they are referring to, right? I mean, there's, yeah, obviously, I don't think we things change, right? New things may develop. Obviously, when we come up with this new initiative now, it may be addressing the issues that we want to address at that moment. But then things may change in the future. Obviously, we need more other kind of measures or initiative that to enable us to address that kind of initiative that may occur in the future. So it will never be sufficient. Yeah, we'll always have to adapt and always assess, right? I mean, that's what I do in monitoring. We do and assess, we learn from what we have monitored and then see what changes that we need to undertake in order for us to be better in the future.
Yeah, so that we're nimble when the time comes. Cik Nur Fadila, any thoughts on that?
This is, I think, the debate that I always have internally within my team and also the business team, right? Of course, climate crisis and also the climate action and also the climate initiatives that we have right now. Take one example. For example, Malaysia has set a goal to be net zero by 2050. And using SBTI, science-based calculation, we also set the journey for Telecom Malaysia where it gets us, right? So we do all the things that feasible today within our reach and within our means to chart the future. So be it from modernization of our infrastructure today, we need to make sure that we modernize TM's infrastructure because we not only servicing ourselves, but also Malaysia and also the region. That's one, right? Two is that the practices and also the policies that we have internally in TM has to also be changed, right? To adopt this, right? The third one is that I mentioned just now, the future build that telecom has as a principle and policy will always be, the future will also be better than the current infrastructure, current buildings, premises, data center, and all that. The fourth element is that as the telecommunication reach a journey toward the future, right, more and more physical infrastructure you see today will move to more software-based and also cloud-based. So that means when telecom adopt that, that is also a good move towards managing the climate crisis, right? But hence, right, the question that we have is that when we do all that, at a certain point of time, we ask ourselves, is Malaysia is going to adopt full renewable or green energy? So our calculation in terms of adopting renewable energy stop at that. If the national grid company does not provide whatever it, it needs to adopt renewable energy as fast as possible, if ASEAN do not move towards sharing of renewable energy as fast as it can, so us as someone which is subscribed to the service will then be here. That's per our journey. Then what's next? You are right. I think there's more than just a policy. We need to put all our hands and heads together, not only in Malaysia, at ASEAN level as well. So if, let's say, we can do all these policy decisions and policy adoptions and then execution together, I think we, inshallah, will build the future that we want to build.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that, Cik Nur Fadila. And ladies and gentlemen, with that, of course, it has been a discussion around focusing on integration, digital infrastructure, and sustainability, but more than anything, the importance of execution and also coherent systems with the right leadership. It's been an absolute pleasure, and also thank you all very much for your increased participation. I'm sure you can reach out to perhaps our esteemed speakers if you would really like to get a little bit more information about some of the questions you asked and that we did not have time for. On that note, once again, thank you very much to Dr. Zafarullah and Cik Nur Fadila. I'm Tamina Kausji signing off for now. Back to you.
Thank you to all our speakers for a compelling and strategic dialogue. Kindly remain on stage as we invite Farooz Nadar to present the tokens of appreciation to all our panelists.
Request.
Once again, ladies and gentlemen, please give another round of applause to all our panelists. Thank you, Faros. Thank you, panelists. Ladies and gentlemen, we now proceed to a very special launch led by our esteemed partners. Today, we officially launch the ESG Playbook, Practical Steps for Manufacturing SMEs, developed by Alliance Bank, together with our knowledge partners, Monash University Malaysia and Zurich Insurance Malaysia, and supported by UN Global Compact Network, Malaysia and Brunei, Penang Green Council, and the Malaysian Plastics Manufacturers Association. Ladies and gentlemen, the ESG Playbook equips Malaysian manufacturing SMEs with actionable guidance across the entire value chain. Built on real insights from 10 SMEs, it simplifies regulations, tools, and financial incentives, helping businesses turn sustainability into meaningful action. Ladies and gentlemen, before I invite all our distinguished partners and guests to join us on stage for this memorable launch event, I want to remind you once again, ladies and gentlemen, to kindly switch your mobile phones to silent mode, and also do ensure to visit the UNGC MYB booth. Ladies and gentlemen, once you have taken your photos and shared your experiences and insights on social media using our event hashtag GoESG2026. Once you have posted your photos, do visit the UNGC MYB booth after tagging and posting your photos to collect a free gift while stocks last. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let us resume with our launch of the ESG Playbook, Practical Steps for Manufacturing SMEs. To mark this launch, may I now invite our distinguished guests to join us on stage. Mr. Kelly Kam, Group Chief Executive Officer of Alliance Bank Malaysia Berhad. Professor Dato Dr. Adiba Kamarul Zaman, President and Pro Vice Chancellor of Monash University Malaysia. Teresa Wong, Chief Risk Officer, Zurich Malaysia PNC Segment and Head of Sustainability Risk. Mr. Farouz Nadar, Executive Director of UN Global Compact Network Malaysia and Brunei. Ms. Josephine Tan, General Manager of Penang Green Council. And Mr. C.C. Chia, President of Malaysian Plastics Manufacturers Association. May I now invite all partners on stage to step forward to the lever handle. Kindly place one hand on the lever handle, and on my count, push the lever forward. In 3, 2, 1. Presenting to you the ESG Manufacturing Playbook. To all our partners, please remain on stage for a photo opportunity. For our first photo opportunity, may I invite all partners to place your hands on the lever together and smile for the cameras. For our second photo opportunity, the ESG playbook is being handed to you on stage. Please hold the playbook facing forward for the cameras. Once again, to all partners, please hold the playbook, face it forward for the cameras, and smile. Once again, thank you to all our partners. Ladies and gentlemen, please give another round of applause for the official launch of the ESG Manufacturing Playbook. We kindly invite all partners to return to your seats as we prepare the stage for the next panel discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, while we set the stage, let us look ahead to our next session. The manufacturing value chain reimagined, practical ESG steps for SMEs. We know that a corporate sustainability is only as resilient as its supply chain. For SMEs, ESG is often seen as a complex hurdle, yet it is actually a catalyst for national growth. This session brings together a unique synergy of strategic finance, intellectual rigor, and large-scale industry. We will explore how this convergence can de-risk the transition, turning our manufacturing value chain from a point of vulnerability into a true competitive advantage. We often talk about the gap between policy and practice. In this next conversation, we aim to bridge that gap. Our speakers today represent the full ecosystem needed to make this work, from the banks that fund the transition to the educators who provide the knowledge and the business leaders who are implementing it on the ground. We invite you to sit back and prepare for a truly actionable discussion. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, as we await for the stage to be set, I would like to remind you to keep your phone in silent modes. And of course, you are also invited to visit Alliance Bank, Telecom Malaysia, KLCCP, and UNGZ MYB exhibition booths located outside the auditorium right after our conference today. And we also encourage your active participation, ladies and gentlemen, in which you have witnessed during the panel discussions and Q&A sessions. We will be using Slido. Hence, you may scan the QR code displayed on the screen. And once you've joined the event, you may type in your questions at any time during the session. Once again, a big shout out and a thank you to our event patron, Alliance Bank Malaysia Berhad, event partners, Telecom Malaysia Berhad, KLCCP Staple Group, Sarawak Energy Berhad, our event merchandise partner, Focus Point Holdings Berhad, TNG Digital Sendirian Berhad, QSR Brands Holdings Berhad, and not to forget our venue partner, AICB Center of Excellence. With that, ladies and gentlemen, now that the stage is set, let's bring the architects of this playbook back to the discussion of how we can put it into action. Joining us on stage to discuss this transformation are Mr. Kelly Kam, Group Chief Executive Officer, Alliance Bank Malaysia Berhad, Gary Gan Kian Kit, Managing Director, Hexa Food Sendirian Berhad, Professor Dato Dr. Adiba Kamrul Zaman, President and Pro Vice Chancellor, Monash University Malaysia. Lin Chi Yung, Managing Director, Thumbprints United Sandran Berhad. And guiding this conversation, we are pleased to welcome Mr. Eddie Suresh, Board Director at Large, UNGC MYB, as this session's moderator. Let's give all of them a warm round of applause as they take the stage. I will now be passing the time to Mr. Eddie Suresh.
Well, good morning, and thank you to my panelists. I'm sure we're going to have an interesting discussion. Probably the hardest thing to do will be to also save some time to take some questions from the floor as well. And so our session today is going to be the manufacturing value chain reimagined, right? And what are the practical steps for on ESG that SMEs can take? Now let's start by understanding what is the actual situation, right? So ESG for SMEs is actually not a strategy issue, right? But more so, it is a clarity issue. More so, also being a cost issue, and maybe to some extent, it's also a confidence issue on how to take the next steps forward. Now, SMEs are always being asked to do ESG, right? And at a time when they have to look at margins, and at a time when they have to look at data, it is not easy to maneuver around the expectations, not only from the banks, but also from their customers and also the supply chain. And with that, many of them are caught in the middle, and they are wondering, how do they navigate their next steps? So today, it's more about understanding what actually works and what doesn't work. What can be realistically done and what are steps that can be taken to move forward. I'm joined by all my wonderful panelists. We've got leaders from the finance, academia, and SME sectors. Each of them will bring different views. So I would also like to invite the audience. Don't forget, you are going to help me to nudge them to give you the answers that you want. Right. So the question that we all want to, foremost, I think, mainly we want to understand how do SMEs turn ESG from perceived burdens and into value chain advantage. Now, how do we move the conversation forward? Of course, we have wonderful questions that we're going to pose to you guys. And to some extent, I was told that, don't be kind. So I'm going to do my best to keep it a bit more neutral and balanced as well. Right. Now, without taking away too much of time from my panelists, I'm going to start the question with what everyone is wondering about the launching earlier. Someone is asking me if there's going to be a detonation of some sorts that's going to happen earlier. So it's not. So, however, the launching also marks that the ESG SME playbook has been launched. And with that, I would like to invite Kelly to share a little bit more about what the playbook is all about.
Yeah. So firstly, thank you, Eddie, for the question, and thank you everyone for making the time to be here with us today. I actually see a number of familiar faces from the previous sessions as well. I think this entire ESG progress that we've gone together has been a journey, right? So when we started off this journey 3-4 years ago, we started off with surveys. So we started off with ESG Survey 1, which looked towards asking SMEs, are you even aware of what's happening with the ESG journey? And we found back then, 3-4 years ago, and only 14% even kind of understood what ESG was. 2 years fast forward, we did an ESG survey part 2. And we found that awareness was no longer an issue. Over 85% of all of our SMEs were aware what ESG was about, why it was important. But we came a point in time where, as Eddie said, the question then become, hey, I know, but how do I do? I've got so many other issues to have to tackle with. I've got cost constraints, I've got capital constraints, I've got people constraints, I've got resource constraints while I have my own business. Now, events like this provide a great platform for awareness, but past just panels, you guys want more detailed guidance towards being able to implement it after sessions like these are done. And that's where us and our partners, so we set up this innovation impact labs with our partners, Monash University, Zurich, supported obviously by our other partners from MPMA, from Penang Green Council, as well as really, really close partners, UNGC, MYB, to come up with a playbook. And this is what the playbook is about. This is not trying to tell you any more about what ESG is. It's about putting it into a guideline approach, a framework, starting with the manufacturing sector on how we can practically implement it in a way that makes sense. So that really, Eddie, is the genesis of why this playbook is here, is to put thought and strategy into actual action. And we joke about the bigger firms, and I think some of you know, we outside some of them say, this ESG strategy thing is really for bigger companies where you call in consultants and do it. And we did think about it, right? And this is something where we've outsourced the work through knowledge partners, through folks in the industry, with public sector to come up with playbooks which will be useful for all your companies. That's the nutshell playbook.
Thank you, Kelly. I think it's quite good for SMEs to pick up the playbook and use this as a navigation tool for them to take the next steps and get the conversations and also get the execution steps to move forward as well. So I think thank you to Alliance Bank and also all the partners for coming together and putting this playbook available for everyone to use. Now, before I turn the guns to my SME buddies as well, but before that, I think I want to go to Dato' Adiba. And from the perspective of, from navigations, we also need to understand the data and the complexities that come from it. So SMEs are often overwhelmed with ESG frameworks, data demands, and from an academic and research perspective, what minimum ESG foundations should SMEs focus on first to remain credible as well as competitive?
We at Monash University Malaysia are very proud to be part of this journey together with Alliance and UN Global Compact and Zurich and other partners to advance ESG in Malaysia. As a knowledge partner, I think what's important for us is, I mean, I don't think, seriously speaking, I don't think it's just the SMEs that feel overwhelmed. Even large companies, although they have possibly better support to advance this agenda. So, the first thing I guess that SMEs should look at is where are they in this journey? So a mapping exercise would be what I would think would be the first thing that anyone just getting onto this journey would want to do. And then look at, what your company does versus what are the requirements. And in terms of the pillars, some of you who know me probably know that the S in the ESG is something that's very close to my heart. But I think for any company, the G is probably what you should really start off with. If you get the governance right, get the ethos of the principles of the company right, the S and the E should follow. Because around things like, well, let's pick corruption and modern slavery. This is uppermost in my mind because as part of I guess Monash Malaysia is no longer an SME, but part of a large multinational. The whole corruption and part of governance, as well as modern slavery, gets drummed into us, and even we have trouble complying to the Australian standards of modern slavery, for example, with the current Malaysian thing. So you kind of as an SME, you kind of have to look at those those pillars, where you are with it, so that mapping exercise, what your industry, what your company move towards it. For me personally, I think it needs to start with governance.
Thank you. Also sounds like they need a lot of thinking skills. And I'm sure that, they can refer to all the wonderful academia guys who are also here in the room as well for some guidance on, how to navigate the thought process as well, because it's not easy to some extent. Chiong, I'm coming over to you. And from an SME operator's experience, what were some of the hardest ESG adjustments to implement in your operations, and what turned out to be easier than expected? And give us the hard truth as well.
Thank you, Eddie. When we began our journey in ESG, I would say like it stretches back like 15 years ago. At that point of time, ESG don't even come into existence. We were talking about CSR at that point in time. And at that point of time, we don't have a big team. We don't have like endless budget, but we have the desire to go export. So the only way that can help us to scale is to embed our business practices with all this ESG element, because we were being audited by SEDEX and EcoVadis. And one of the hardest thing that I think at that point of time, it was like budget. Budget is, is a constraint for us. But at that point of time, we say that let's not fear about it, because we don't have to take like big step that jump over the hurdles at one time. So we were doing it like baby steps, baby steps. We try to make reporting right, and at that moment, we were also thinking about how can we build renewable energy. To build solar panel 15 years back, it was very, very costly. And the panel itself the price is scary. But we think that if we don't do that, can we in fact compete internationally? And of course, there is a lot of dispute within the board members. It always comes back to, if you were to do this, what will be the ROI? Well, I said, if we don't do it, are we going to even survive in days to come? And being very much in the sales department, I said, if we don't do it, we were going to be doomed in the next 15 to 20 years. But if we're going to do it, I promise that we're going to scale and make it a growth strategy. And it actually happened. And of course, turning the company into another level is like what Professor Adiba says, that the S element. It's basically turning the company into a community enterprise where profits is being shared with the employees. Whenever we make a profit, we share profit quarterly with the employees in order to get engagement and ownership, so that they will continue, to work relentlessly for the company. And at the same time, one of the toughest one is also to implement the zero recruitment fees. And basically, when we hired foreign workers, we have to pay them fully. So there will be that bondage within them, and they don't have to worry about repaying the finances or the loan that they have taken back in the origin company, in the origin country that they comes from. So these are all costs, yeah, and it actually require, I would say, not cost itself. We got to look into it as an investment, because the payback will come from where we practice as an SME at that point of time, 15 years ago. We have actually scaled right now into a mid-tier company, which I believe all these things actually play a part in it. And of course, we're talking about quick win will be to engage the employees with an employee. We call it the productivity link wage system. So when the employees work on the floor and they work at a certain speed that we calculated, which is manageable, so we reward them by piecemeal. Whenever they do something, we reward them. Those were the quick wins. And of course, we don't allow our
our staff actually to tapao with those one-time use plastic. What we did is that no ikat tepi drinks, okay, and we buy them like washable containers, so they will have to buy food with the containers. These are some of the quick wins that we nurture them, we tell them, we engage them, we motivate them, and I mean it's shocking. I mean it's a cultural change within Tabriz itself. Yeah, thank you.
It's quite heartwarming. You've got to empower them in order to take actions, right? So it's not just a matter of telling them to take actions, but when you give them the aid and guidance as well as empowerment, that is easier for the whole of organization to take the action as well.
Yeah, one thing that I miss out, Eddie, is sorry. One thing that I miss out to do business without zero corruption, it's very tough in Malaysia. And those who have gotten my card, there is a motto that says, no lie, no cheat, no bribe. So doing business with thumbprints, there is no greasing. It's also good because I don't have to go on late night entertainment. So I mean that is part and parcel of doing business, and requiring even the customer to sign our corporate integrity pledge that set a very high bar. So in the event that they say, well, at times I get appointment, yeah, Eddie. One time I go and see the customer, then there is no more follow-up. They don't want to follow up with me because of our business ethics, yeah.
It sounds like your policy also does good to your health, since you don't need to go out
Very much, yeah.
to some extent. Gary, I'm coming over to you. And for SMEs in fast-moving sectors like food manufacturing, where time and margins are tight, right? Which ESG actions delivered the most impact with least disruptions?
We Hello. All right. So we basically we started from zero. So the highest impact is definitely social for employees and things. So our first factory is around Klang area. Shalam Klang is in the border. So around the area we have a lot of gangsters. So gangsters, yeah, we have that problem, and a lot of times, then you have like loan shark issues and things like that. So finance was like the key, because it's like, are you able to provide them soft finances so that they don't fall into all this income trap? But I'm not sure like any of you know like there's something called kutu those days. Yeah, probably you guys wouldn't know. So there are a lot of very, and also it's like they will spend money on things like numbers and things like that. So those are definitely the highest impact. Then after that, we have like policies for single mother, hardcore poor along the way. So when I think the whole idea is whenever we can help, we can afford to help, we help. So that's the S part. So then after that, we have a team. We start to tackle bigger customers, bigger brands. That's where we need the governance. So for food industry, it's quite straightforward. It's like HACCP. Then currently we are FSSC certified. So FSSC is considered like the cream of cream. That means that you can supply to any company, Unilever, Nestle, etc. Then for the environmental part, what we are trying to do is we are trying to reduce the wastage. And so wastage does happen. Sometimes we sell products to supermarket, and after 1 or 2 years, then some of them they can't be sold, then they get returned. So it will be more on managing those. Personally, I think that packaging material is probably like the hardest, because if you are not careful, we substitute like a subpar packaging material and ends up everything returned, which is even worse than the initial idea. And also, like, we are in the spices business, by the way. Spices tend to sit in your closet for a very long time. So it's not like drinks that you will consume within few months. Like sometimes, then after some time, you will use it, and you want to make sure that it's safe for consumption.
Thank you. I think the question that many are still trying to get more answers from is from Kelly, actually. So from Alliance Bank and the things that you are currently doing in banking and beyond to support SMEs within the manufacturing sector, including those in the supply chain, perhaps you can share a little bit more on how else is Alliance Bank helping the sector?
Alliance Bank, it was our first banker. Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Gary. That's a good testimony there.
So-
But Kelly, please add on as Gary finishes up, and let us know a little bit more on what else have Alliance Bank has in store. Thank you, Gary. Also, but feel free to add on in terms of what
Yeah,
sort of assistance that you have
we did
received.
add on a few other bankers along the way. But Alliance was genuinely our first banker. So I think Alliance was the first bank that focused on SME. I think it's like 14, 15 years back. Yeah. In case you guys don't know.
Thank you. This was not a paid session, you know. So yeah.
Yeah, no, not at all. But thank you for that. So with Alliance Bank, you have seen, obviously we're a bank, so we would also provide financing. But what we saw in the early stages with ESG is this discussion about what is ESG. So as I said, 3-4 years ago, and we worked very closely with our partners, UNGC, MYB, to try to answer that question first, right? Otherwise, we are just sitting here waiting for the SMEs to come and talk to us about ESG. As Chiang said, in the early days, it was harder to find information. You had to look for it yourself. Hard to find support of like-minded people. So I think for us, there are two prongs to this. The first one is obviously direct financing. So for SMEs, MTCs who know what they want, they can come and speak to us, and we've got avenues through green financing facilities, either through the transition financing or green tech, high tech financing. So for those that know what they want, we can always work with them in developing the necessary financial requirements. Then there's the other bucket that we talk about, which is for those that are still going down this journey. So 3-4 years ago, it was surveys, create awareness. So for, again, those of you who follow Alliance Bank, we follow a 3A model, right? The first one is advocacy, then advice, then answer. The first 2A's clearly is slightly beyond banking. So we work with partners in spreading the message, getting people to understand what it is, why it's important, that it's not just a compliance issue. It's not just about saving the world and leaving a better place for the future generations. It goes beyond that, right? It's now past that. Advocacy is no longer an issue. As we said, as the last survey, we found that over 80% of SMEs know what it is about. We've got states that work with us directly. I spoke about Penang Green Council. We have a dedicated survey with our friends in Sarawak as well, who've been huge proponents of this journey. Coming down to now the implementation aspects of it, and I encourage you to go through the new practical steps. We started off with manufacturing because clearly that's where the most pressure is, but also the most potential impact. The other thing we also did was we did the baseline, we mapped it out through, again, a very clear framework between, and if you took the industry away, I think all of you can understand the process of the value chain is going to be similar. You look for your supplies, you look for your suppliers, quality of materials, procurement, you look at your operations, you look at your distribution, you look at your marketing. So we bucket it to activities that you can relate to, and then guide you through the opportunities that are around all those areas, finding responsible suppliers, finding opportunities to save costs, manage waste, finding policies that will help employee well-being. And I think the final two pieces there, Eddie, and I'll move on, is to make it relevant to Malaysia. So there's so many textbooks that are international, global. When you start understanding, you guys are not in it alone, all right? And that's why with Chiang, we've got Gary in our book. You also see another couple of examples there. Real practical examples, not just about ESG as a compliance checkbox, but as a real potential competitive advantage for you. So, the whole idea here is helping our SMEs beyond banking. And then when they are ready, so when you've gone through this thought process, you've arrived at a certain stage where you either say, okay, now that we've got our plan, we need solar, we need waste management, or we need new machineries for more efficiency. that leads back to the final A, the answers. And that's where we can work with you very, very closely. Now, why we're doing this? One world, right? It's a one world, one country. It's a win-win situation. The better you guys do, the more competitive you are, the better the banks do. So it actually is also in our best interest to ensure that we all do well together.
Thank you. Quite a philosophical approach as well. I think it's fair to say that Alliance Bank is not just a place for access to capital, but also access to advice, right? And I think that's quite interesting. And on that note, coming to Dr. Adiba, how can universities and research institutes play a more practical role in terms of supporting SMEs beyond studies and frameworks, and especially in capacity building and applied solutions? Perhaps you could shed a bit more light on that.
Yeah, sure, Gary. I mean, I guess for any university, our key function is that capacity building and educating the next generation. But listening to the other speakers, I think where we are clearly now is no longer the advocacy, and what you have done is really change the mindset of your employees and your the people you work with, and certainly both your organizations as well. So I think the first big core function for us is to embed the ESG principles in all the courses that we teach, right? So that we build a new generation of workers, whether they're in SMEs or whether they're in banking or whether they're in engineering, that this will be, something that is a given, right? For us oldies, of course, ESG is a new concept 15 years ago, but for the young ones, that's what we hope to do, to embed it into what we teach them, how we teach them. So that's number one. That's our core function, educating. And of course, for those that have missed the boat, it's through executive education and working with companies like yourself. From the research part, of course, we universities are famous for doing esoteric research that no one wants to do. Well, I'd like to think that for us, it's research that matters. So research that's impactful, and that's why we feel very privileged to work with Allianz and the SMEs and in all the surveys that we've been a part of. So impact measurement, even research into what your company is doing with food manufacturing. How can that, that be improved? Practical research. So to that end, we, in terms of how we teach and what we do research at Monash University is very much embedded in industries. And it's not just, 2 weeks of internship where the first years go and make coffee, no longer those sorts of internships. Our placements with partners, with industry partners, actually are credit bearing. So there's meaning to the students and hopefully meaning to the to the hosts as well. And then there are what we call flagship programs where we have undergraduate, actually this thing called GIG, Global Immersion Guarantee, where we have students from Australia as well as students from Malaysia. This year we had something like 450 students from Malaysia and Australia going to places in Malaysia to solve a particular environmental problem, working with community partners. So that's about that, embedding this to be part and parcel of, doesn't matter which faculty they come from, that the E part and the S part is what they grow up with and to be. And then there's another flagship program we call MIG, where we invite, this is for postgraduate, we invite partners like companies like yourself and the students working teams to find a solution for the industry. So the industry comes out with a problem, we work with students, you work with students. So So meaning to say that universities these days can no longer be that ivory tower where we do research that we think are sexy. No, it has to be the other way around. It has to be research that are practical, that solve real world problems. And that's what we take pride in. And of course, the third part of what we get our academics to do. And these are, it's very important. You have to measure these things, otherwise people don't do right. So as part of their annual performance review, as well as their promotion, so we divide their days into for standard academics, 40% teaching, 40% research, and 20% community engagement. But again, it's got to be like impactful, measurable community engagement. So it's embedded, because otherwise it won't get done, right? So hopefully universities now and of the future are not just, of course you need research that are esoteric. I mean that the basic fundamental research in physics that you can't see what the or in maths that you can't see what the relevance is in the future. Those things, those basic fundamental research still needs to happen. But by and large, how we like to think, how we like to do research is working with partners to solve real world challenges and problems.
Thank you. Just quick follow up to that. Do you see this shift happening with all universities as well?
Yes. I think but there's a lot of work to be done. I had the pleasure of hosting UMT, for example, 2 weeks ago, University of Malaysia Terengganu, in this big Lancet Commission on Climate that was launched last year. And they're doing fantastic work and really niche areas in environmental protection of the sea, the blue, what is called the blue industry, the blue something or other, because they're right there on the East Coast, saving the ocean, saving the turtle. So very much, so that's a great example of a public university doing fantastic work.
Thank you. I think that shifts the lens quite well in the sense that the academia also now acts as the enabler and gets things done, and understanding the practicality of things that need to be executed as well. Chi Yong, I'm going to circle back to you now. From your experience, what early ESG decisions delivered real operational or market benefits rather than just compliance comfort?
To me, I look at in a sense that it has to be a market strategy for growth, that's for sure. Because if you speak about compliances, if it's not sustainable, the company does not sustain, businessmen will not care about sustainability. So it has to create a competitive edge in that sense. And when we break down the ESG, working together with customers that, to turn their use of virgin paper into recycled paper, into FSC, to help them set their brand against the competitors, it actually helps them to elevate the brand presence. And of course, it also brand ourselves as one of the preferred guy to do green printing. When we speak about, turning the company into a community enterprise, sharing a profit within the company together with the employees, it actually set us to be, a company that is fair and giving back the dignity very much to the workers itself. And one main thing that when we launched this community enterprise, because profit is being shared to the workers, right, to the employees, what we did was something insane. We kept the dividend of the shareholders. and, and the shareholders they was like, how on earth? Because we were shareholders, are we supposed not to get dividend by the year end? Well, we said, well, you will get, the day of return will come when one day when you go onto IPO, the enterprise value of the company will go. So you don't take your money right now, you invest it back to the employees and give them a sharing of it so that there will be more engagement along the way. And when it comes to G, it will be very much on governance. I'm a hard believer of governance. To me, if governance is actually on track, the E and S will flow, just like what Professor Dr. Adiba says. Because at many times, there is no budget. Why there is no budget? Because the budget was allocated, but it was misused. And of course, many a time people think that, hey, Chiong, you are doing printing, but why you talk so much about anti-corruption? You are like a crime buster. I said, well, I mean, we got to make a change to Malaysia. I mean, of course, whenever we open the newspaper, they're embroiling news about corruption day and night. It never ceases. So, of course, along the way, it actually built trust and integrity with transparency. And of course, big and larger corporation, they find peace working with us because they know that whenever we supply at cost. There is no top up or greasing. Yeah. I mean, it's a growth strategy. Yeah.
I'm also curious, how did you get your shareholders to agree to that?
Well, because I was a sales director at that point of time, I said, well, if you don't do it, you will give the salesman a reason that they can't do sales. So because we are competing with very much internationally, we are competing with China. And I'm surprised how they do things. I mean, on the ESG scale, I think we talk about our competition. There are a lot of catch up that we need to do. So with that sense, I said, well, just keep your money, invest it to the company. One day when you go on IPO and you go for exit, the enterprise value will go up. You will double and triple back your return. And somehow, they don't resist anymore.
Well done, sir. Well done. That's not easy. Okay, Gary, over to you. And what advice would you give SMEs that are starting ESG lead but face increasing pressure from customers, regulators, as well as financiers? So give us a little bit of insights as well.
So our take is a bit different. Now, in the food industry, we do work with MNCs in the supermarket chains. And supermarket chains, because they are heading into ESG directions, you would need to comply with those. Otherwise, you just can't be the supplier. So it's like a live or death situation. So we work with a lot of retailers in Southeast Asia and in Malaysia. So every year they have like new standards. So if you don't follow, your competitor follow, you are there. So you must follow. So it becomes like a guideline. It's quite similar to the halal. So halal was becoming mainstream, I think, 15 years back. So we will need to apply for halal standards, need to comply with the standards. Then after that, you have HACCP. And ESG will be probably one. The thing with the ESG guidelines, a lot of those, they give you quite a fair amount of time to work on it. So if you look at the ESG, you cover a lot of areas. Then when they audit you, they say, okay, this area, probably you can be better. And they will also give you suggestion like how you can comply with all those stuff. So at the end, it's a whole supply chain. I think the Alliance Bank handbook, they did talk about a lot of points, like the early copies. Like you guys will need to wait for it to get it, but it is outlined in the copy. But for us, so we managed to get, I think it's like 4 to 5 large projects based on the compliance of ESG. So it is quite straightforward. It's like whoever they can comply can supply to us, and why not?
Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna shift our discussion to take in questions from the floor, and I see the first question has many thumbs up. So it's for you, Cheong, and a question for Thumb Prince and Hexa, both of you guys. What is your growth in revenue percentage per pre and post ESG? Okay, I need to wear my specs next. How many years did it take to see the growth? Immediate or? I think it's more of a rhetorical at the end. So yeah, but feel free to jump in.
I got to be frank. The moment that we launched the zero corruption practice, no lie, no cheat, no bribe, at that point of time, it was painful. We lost almost half of our customers. Because at any point of time, this meaning to say there is, you cannot even give gift. So, I mean, there are also suppliers that entices with, paid trip to overseas to see their machines. We have to decline it. Because the moment that we take that incentive, that perk, we are bound like, I gotta buy from you. So all these are cost relevant. And I mean, when I say that, I mean, I was thinking that, I encourage the directors to go ESG, right? I mean, they buy in, but we are not making the numbers. So so we got to shift and we got to screen out the customer that is on the take, and we go into another level to get righteous customer that value no greasing policy in the company. And we found that, I mean, to me, it's not going to be immediate. When we start doing it, I would say that was like back in 2011. Our revenue that has actually, I would say, tripled at this point in time. In a matter of 15 years, we were doing something like 20 over million. Now we are doing close to about 70 million. So we cannot have like a quick gain, yeah, because you have to set the foundation bit by bit, layer by layer. I mean, if it's going to be a quick gain, then it's going to be a quick crash as well. So just endure it, because nowadays customer, they don't only buy quality, they also buy with conscience, with responsibility sourcing, which is something which is very critical. It's a matter whether we do it right now, or we see the competitors doing it and eating into your shares. Yep.
Thank you. Gary, would you like to add anything to that?
I think for us, it's quite similar to Mr. Lima. That means that we didn't really like implemented or change direction. It was always like 10 years back, we started to do a little bit by bit across our areas. Yeah, our revenue growth is about ×3, ×4, something. But we started at a smaller scale. I think we were doing like 7, then right now we are like 35. So within that period, but our industry is much bigger. So we get to enjoy the growth. But then I don't really like the correlation. Like I can't really correlate the both, but it's more like, okay, your employees want to be in a company that do good. Your customer wants to buy from a company that do good. So you try to do as much as possible. That's it.
Ultimately, I think you still get to balance doing good and doing well while you're at it, So that's important, right?
I think it's more like, otherwise you keep talking about profit, P&L, sales revenue, cost. Sometimes you talk about ESG, it's quite nice. It changed the tone. It's like suddenly it's okay, then this year what can we do?
Right. Thank you. Let's take another question. Which part of the value chain is most ignored by SMEs but actually carries the highest ESG risk? Anyone wants to share their input?
For myself.
Yes, go ahead.
For us, it's waste. I mean, it's quite because we're in the FMCGs, so we need to, and inventory management is probably like the highest impact, like the easiest to do and the highest impact. Because if you can have better data, you can predict what will be your item SKU and what's the optimal quantity. Everything will be. And it is also part of just-in-time management. So yeah, definitely inventory for us and waste.
Kelly, if you don't mind, perhaps you can weigh in as well, because you guys do a lot of engagements with SMEs, and from your observations and interactions with them, perhaps you can also share what is commonly ignored as well.
Yeah, the reason I paused, I mean, it can be what actually carries the highest ESG risk or higher. We spoke about it's making it sound like ESG requires a lot of money. Now, at certain levels, it will eventually become more and more expensive, but you don't need, as you heard from Mr. Lim and Gary said, you don't need to start off with, let's spend a lot of money and upgrade everything, right? The G part is a matter of, as Mr. Lim has spoken about, changing policy, changing culture, changing mindset. Technically, it doesn't, no money come out of your pocket, although you will need that period of readjustment from staff, from customers. But that will lead to what Gary was talking about, which I think that some of our SMEs don't think through enough is your upstream. Who do you sell to? Who are your customers? Do they appreciate you being ESG compliant, you being ESG positive, right? So for instance, a lot of work we do with the, so at, how we kind of tailor it at different levels of size, you are looking for different things. At the SME level is how to implement at the base level. At the larger corporate levels, we work with them on supply chain audit, right, for scope 3. So your scope 3s are also there. So if you work and look up through your supplier chain, larger corporates, that's actually a very good place for you to find opportunities to not turn it into a risk, but as an opportunity, as you saw in Gary's example, right? Once he becomes compliant with all these areas, his buyer pool increases. So I would say, and I know Mr. Lim has spoken a lot about corruption, bribery, and it resonates with me, right? Because in Alliance Bank, that's the same view we take. And if you were to look at it as a risk, it is not a risk worth taking. So policy is generally, from what we see from our dealings with SMEs, the first place they don't look. So the governance side, frankly, is the most boring and less, big bang for the buck area, right? No one looks at policy except a few folks, but it carries a high risk if you actually fall foul of, whether we're talking about social issues with your employees, legal issues with corruption, so on and so forth. So spend time in governance, I would say.
Okay, all right. Thank you. So we're almost at time, and I would like to go down the line for some final thoughts. Jiong, perhaps I can start with you first. Yeah.
I mean, on how can we engage and educate, enlighten? Okay, um, we send our workers, our staff itself, because we are a member of UNGC, MYB, and of course, the learning resources, it's very flexible. Our team members go into the academy, they download reading materials and read from it. And at the same time, we also set up our own internal auditors team, and we also have a zero corruption committee within Thumbprints. So any customer or any stakeholders can actually file a case in suspect there is taking or soliciting from any of the staff in Thumbprints, and they can just report it to the top guy, which is the chairman. And given the needs to integrity commitment, which seems untenable, and with that, we actually go beyond right now. I mean, our early days, we were grooming SME and MSME. Now, we actually wanted to work with universities to bring in integrity topics into the universities. I mean, of course, it doesn't come from Thumbprint. It comes from NGO that has very high level of integrity, trainings with them. And with that, I believe that, it's to bring into the DNA, it requires time for sure. It requires time, but do not worry about how far you can increase in the next 1 year. I mean, a little bit increase. I mean, we're talking about gradual increase, 1%, 2%, and then jump to 5% and 10%. And over the years, you will grow eventually. That's what my thought is as being an SME guy and, scaling into a mid-tier company. So, I mean, we still practice the same thing. I mean, it it doesn't have to be a big jump, because when we talk about big jump, then you're worried about, big budgets, right? Don't do it like me, lah. I mean, I say that. Let's turn the company to become, working with directors to become the zero corruption, and then we lost client, and then we don't know how to answer to the board. But of course, I mean, thank God when things flows, when you do the right things right, I mean, I believe that business is sustainable in that sense, yeah. And we have been through that, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Can I get some closing thoughts from Dato' Adiba as well?
I think on that subject, Ms. Lim has just described it really well. How do you educate it? It starts from the top, right? It's the leadership and, using the cliche, walking the talk. So it's one thing to have policies, which is a must, but having leadership who believes in it, breathes it, walks it, talks it, I think it's a start. It's an essential start. Then you can supplement it with everybody hates mandatory training, including myself, but if you have to undergo this on an annual basis and with some carrot and stick, and make it simple but impactful, that's where universities come in to do this kind of mandatory training that matters, and not 2 days of mandatory training in ESG behind Zooms that I don't think work, but short, sharp, and that's relevant to your companies. Yeah, I think then eventually it becomes a culture, right? So I think those are a few things, but the leadership is probably the most important, that this is the culture that this company is adopting. Everybody will need to fall in line.
Thank you. The tone must come from the top as well, right? Yeah, thank you. Gary, perhaps some closing thoughts as well.
All right. So every year in early of the years, we'll talk about ESG among our employees. So what we'll do is we'll ask each department, it's like, okay, so what's the problem that you are facing right now? So I think you guys can do the same. So you just plug ideas from 8 to 9. And when you collect all this data, you'll start to see like a pattern. And then yourself as ESG leader or company leader, then you try to combine and align with what you try to do, and then you get everyone on board. So that's what we like. It's like the easiest way. Probably it ends in 1 hour. So it's like, what's your biggest problem? Then we just put everything on the table. I think these three can link together. This year we solve this. Next year we solve this.
You're extremely practical with how to go about it. Thank you. Kelly, over to you.
Yeah, Eddie, thank you. And then it'll be a miss for a banker not to talk about numbers. So, so we start off by saying you don't need to start with a big bang. There's some stuff that you can start, from a very low cost base, which helps your cost, which helps your revenue. The important thing is to start. I think that's number one. Number two, you're not alone, right? So you're not going through this journey on your own. There's support around. UNGC MYB is one of a great resource that we work with, that a lot of you are already part of. Learning resources, access to experts. So leverage on that. Number three, that when the guidebook, you see it, after all that discussion, it'll all come down to capital, right? Can I find financing? So financing clearly exists in multiple areas, the banks being one source of it. But in the guidebook, you'll also see that the government has multiple grants across different areas, whether it's for high tech, whether it's for green transition, whether it's for trade through the different ministries. So it's not just about relying on a single source of capital. Again, the important thing is, as you heard from all the panelists, is that it has to start with you. So use that guidebook, put down the framework, apply it to your business, start off with detailing the easy steps leading on to the big steps, and then you will be able to then leverage the financing sources that are also part of the book. So with that, Eddie, from me, I mean, just you got to start the journey.
Yes, please do.
It's also important to communicate, because your individual employees will think, why are you doing this, right? What's in it for me? And in general, we humans are selfish beings, right? So I don't really care about the environment, but what's in it for me, right? So if we can break it down to what's in it for me, whether it's the flooding or the heat, or from an environment point of view, and what you're doing in terms of the social look, we do well as a company, you'll get the dividend. So I think communicating all that is also very important to all levels of the employee. I know, for example, trying to introduce OSH, occupational health and safety. If you come in and say the government wants you to do this, and this, and people will say, oh, more work, extra work. And then you say, but if you don't do this, the chemicals are going to explode in your face. Then, maybe you should start thinking about doing this the right way. So bring it back to how it impacts them and communicate.
Yeah. I guess we got to demystify and bring it closer to home as well for people to actually understand what the implications are as well. Anyways, thank you. I think we had a wonderful discussion. Thank you to my panelists for bringing so much of honesty as well as a lot of clarity to the conversation as well. I'm sure you guys are available for more questions after this, and do head over to the Alliance Booth Bank if you the booth at the foyer, and you can get your playbook access as well, I'm sure. And not just access to capital, but I believe also access to advice, as what we have heard today. Anyways, yeah, thank you, and looking forward to the next session as well.
Thank you to all our panelists for such an actionable and insightful discussion on reimagining our supply chains. We kindly invite all panelists to remain on stage as we welcome Eddie Suresh to present tokens of appreciation in recognition of their time and contributions today. Ladies and gentlemen, please don't go anywhere as we have our final session for the day coming up next. Give them a huge round of applause once again, ladies and gentlemen, to our amazing panelists and moderator. Can we have all our panelists at center stage for a group photo? Thank you, panelists. Thank you, Eddie. Ladies and gentlemen, we have now reached the final and perhaps most profound segment of our event. To deliver the closing remarks titled Justice and Peace, Reflections from a Freedom Flotilla to Gaza. Drawing from his first-hand experience with the Freedom Flotilla to Gaza, our speaker will reflect on moral responsibility in times of humanitarian crisis. He reminds us that as we shape a resilient future economy, the pillars of equity, accountability, and human dignity must remain central. With that, ladies and gentlemen, to deliver the closing remarks for our Go ESG 2026, please join me in welcoming Prof. Dr. Muhammad Afandi Saleh, Freedom Flotilla Coalition Delegate, to the stage. Please give a big round of applause.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum dan salam sejahtera. Um, Thank you, Miss Moderator. Distinguished guests, respected colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the honor of inviting me to speak at GOESG 2026, organized by the United Nations Global Compact Network. I'm deeply grateful for this platform because the questions we are addressing today are not merely technical or managerial questions. They are moral questions. And moral questions, when ignored, do not disappear. They return to as crisis, economic, political, social, and humanitarian. I speak to you today not only as an academic or a policy analyst, but as someone who has stood on the deck of the Freedom Flotilla, sailing to Gaza. I did not go with weapons, nor with political ambitions. I went with humanitarian intent and moral conviction, together with people from many countries, faiths, and professions who believe that silence had become complicity to the genocide in Gaza today. What I witnessed there compels me to speak honestly today about justice, peace, and moral responsibility in an age where genocide and humanitarian crisis are no longer exceptional events. They have become structural features of our global system, woven into how power is exercised and how value is generated. Ladies and gentlemen, we live in an era of unprecedented connectivity, suffering, and killing are broadcast in real time, in high definition, across our screens, and yet, paradoxically, we also living in an era of moral distancing. In boardrooms, conferences, and policy forums, humanitarian crises are often translated into the language of risk exposure, geopolitical complexity, security dilemmas, and market uncertainty. These terms are not wrong. They have analytical value, but they also dangerously incomplete. One of the most disturbing realities of our time is this: extreme injustice can persist not because of its hidden, but because it is normalized. Gaza is not an invisible crisis. It is one of the most documented genocide and humanitarian catastrophe in modern history. Yet the world has learned how to look without acting, how to speak without accountability, and how to condemn without consequence. This is not merely a political failure, it's a moral failure, and it has profound implications for how we think about governance, sustainability, and responsibility. The Freedom Flotilla was not about confrontation. It was about presence. It was about ordinary people, doctors, academics, engineers, faith leaders, deciding that silence was no longer morally acceptable. When you are at sea facing overwhelming power with nothing but humanitarian intent, certain truths become impossible to ignore. Power without accountability becomes coercion. Security without justice becomes oppressions. Order without morality becomes violence by another name. Most importantly, I learned this: human dignity is not granted by states or institutions. It is inherent. No blockade, no legal agreement, and no geopolitical narrative can erase that human right to exist with dignity and hope. The flotilla was a reminder that conscience does not belong exclusively to governments and international institutions. When institutions fail, human responsibility does not disappear. It shifted to individuals, communities, and civil society. At conferences like this, we often speak about resilience, sustainability, and long-term value. But we also must ask an uncomfortable question: what exactly are we sustaining if injustice is built into the system? There is no sustainable peace without justice. There is no resilient society built on humiliation and exclusion. There is no ethical economy that profits from permanent suffering. Justice is not an idealistic add-on to policy or investment strategy. It is the foundations of legitimacy. History is clear on this point. System collapse not only from external pressure, but also from internal ethical decay. Empires fail. Empires fall not when they lose power, but when they lose moral authority. When entire populations are subjected to collective punishment, when basic rights are suspended indefinitely, where we are not witnessing stability, we are witnessing deferred instability, crisis postponed, not resolved. This brings me directly to the heart of this conference. ESG frameworks emerge because markets and institutions recognize a fundamental truth. Value cannot be separated from human values. Environmental, environmental sustainability that ignores the destructions of human environments is incomplete. Social responsibility that avoids naming injustice is selective. Governance without accountability is cosmetic. True ESG must ask difficult questions. Who bear the cost of our stability? Whose suffering is considered acceptable collateral? If our frameworks cannot speak meaningfully about occupied populations and besieged communities, then we are not managing risk, but we are avoiding responsibility. As we gather here in the early year of 2026, we must be honest about the states of our global politics. We are witnessing a profound crisis of multilateralism. For decades, we rely on post-war institutions, the United Nations, the Security Council, international courts, to uphold peace and enforce international norms. Today, these institutions are often paralyzed by the very powers that dominate them. When vetoes are used to shield atrocity rather than prevent it, the system loses governance credibility. This creates a paralysis of the center, a moral vacuum where law exists without enforcement. This is not just a problem for diplomats. It is a systemic risk for investors, corporations, and societies. If the highest law of humanity can be ignored with impunity, then no contract, no regulation, and no ESG framework is truly secure. But where institutions retreat, something else has risen. We are witnessing the emergence of global society movement, a shift from state-centric diplomacy to citizen diplomacy. The Freedom Flotilla is one example of this transformation, when governments could not or would not let ordinary citizens from dozens of countries step forward. This movement is transnational, digitally connected, and morally driven. It does not wait for deadlock resolutions. It demands accountability directly. For Signal, for those in the corporate investment sectors, This is a critical social signal. Global society has become a new watchdog. They are recentering human dignity by proving that even when multilateralism fails, humanity does not have to. One of the greatest witnesses of global governance today is the erosions of accountability. We have laws and institutions, but enforcement is the absent, but enforcement is selective. We must also confront a dangerous illusion that peace is simply the absence of conflict. Peace is not silence enforced by force. Peace is not stability built on fear. You cannot bomb your way to peace. You cannot starve a people into submission. Peace emerges when justice is restored and dignity is recognized. We live in an age rich in explanation but poor in courage. Every injustice comes with a strategic rationale or a legal technicalities. But moral responsibility begins when excuses end. Future generations will not ask whether it was complicated. They will ask whether we knew, whether we acted, and whether we choose convenience over conscience. Moral leadership means understanding that neutrality in the face of oppressions is not neutrality. Ladies and gentlemen, the future we are trying to build through ESG, sustainability, and governance reform will only be as strong as its moral foundation. If we want a resilient future, we must defend human dignity today. If we want peace, we must insist on justice. If we want legitimacy, we must practice accountability. From the deck of the Freedom Flotilla, the message is clear. Humanity cannot be delayed. Justice cannot be, Justice cannot wait. Conscience cannot be outsourced. The question before us is not whether we have the tools, but whether we have the will. May we choose wisely, may we act courageously, and may we never forget that the true measures of progress is not how advanced our systems are, but how human they remain. Thank you.
A heartfelt thank you to Prof. Dr. Muhammad Afandi Saleh. Your words serve as a powerful reminder that true progress is measured not just in economic figures, but in fairness, dignity, and our shared humanity. Kindly remain on stage as we invite Farouz Nadar to present a token of appreciation to Prof. Dr. Muhammad Afandi Saleh. Once again, thank you, Prof. Dr. Muhammad Afandi Saleh. Thank you, Farouz. Ladies and gentlemen, another big round of applause to all our incredible speakers and supporters today. With that, we come to the conclusion of Go ESG 2026, organized by UN Global Compact Network, Malaysia, and Brunei. We would like to extend our heartfelt appreciation to all our speakers and to our esteemed event patron, Alliance Bank Malaysia Berhad, for their invaluable support. Our sincere thanks to our event partners, Telecom Malaysia Berhad, KLCCP Staple Group, and Sarawak Energy Berhad, for the incredible support in making this event possible. We also wish to thank our event merchandise partner, Focus Point Holdings Berhad, TNG Digital Sandran Berhad, and QSR Brands Holdings Berhad for their valued involvement in enhancing today's experience. On behalf of the organizers, we would also like to extend our sincere thanks to our venue partner, AICB Center of Excellence, for their steadfast collaboration and for hosting us at this wonderful venue. A special thank you as well to all of you, our participants today, for your presence and engagement. You have made this event a meaningful success. Now, before you leave, we love to hear your thoughts. Please take a moment to scan the QR code now displayed on screen to share your feedback on today's event. Your input is incredibly valuable for our continuous improvement. Ladies and gentlemen, lunch is served at room 320, level 3. Our ushers will guide you to the lunch space. To our CEO panelists, the VIP lunch will be held in the annex just across the auditorium. Our ushers will be here to guide you to the room. Remember to follow and tag UN Global Compact Network, Malaysia and Brunei on LinkedIn with the hashtag GoESG2026 and collect your free gift at the UNGC MYB booth after posting your photo while stocks last. Remember to visit our partners exhibition booth at the Azman Hashim Auditorium entrance. And as part of our recycling efforts, kindly return your name tags and lanyards at the registration counter. Thank you once again. We wish you all the best as you continue on your ESG journey. Thank you.